Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another Wednesday sprint. Looks like we're ready to go. Mark, I'm going to pass you the microphone.
So this week we're going to talk a lot about building culture. So this is our people theme this week out of our 4-week sprint. And we're going to talk about building a culture of lean thinking. So essentially what I want to really kind of focus on is what does that whole process actually look like? Because everybody that's here on this call is deploying an operating system and it's taking time, of course, and ultimately the reason we're doing this is to create a culture of lean thinking. A culture where continuous improvement is expected. It's not kind of the exception. It's not something that you're hoping starts. It's something that just is. The way it is in the business is you're continuously improving. And you're looking at results, good or bad, as useful information to guide that continuous improvement. So what does it mean to create this at every level in the business? Let's go to the whiteboard for a minute and we can kind of just talk through what I believe really ultimately kind of pulls this all together and makes it the way it is. And we're going to give you a few good actionable takeaways, a few things to actually work on right away to solidify this, to make sure that everybody in your company understands what lean thinking is and why it's so important and how you're going to actually create that lean philosophy to become part of culture. All right, so ultimately what we're doing is we're trying to create leaders at every level in the business. We don't just want one leader, right? What you end up with when you are the only leader in the company is you end up with a 1-inch by 1-inch kingdom. You can't leave your little kingdom because everything blows up and the wheels fall off. And so what that means is you're tied to your business. Every single day you have to show up or the business falls apart. You lose money, you get stressed out, you upset customers, employees quit because you've built such a tight little kingdom that depends on a ruler of that kingdom. Now, if you've built it that way, that's okay. It's just the way that you knew. But we're talking about building something very different where it's just filled with leaders. And in doing so, we create this incredible amount of freedom for you and for
the business and for everybody is when you've got that beast by his kingdom, and you might kind of liken that to being in jail. You literally can't leave.
Everything falling apart. And that's your entire existence. That's the way you provide for your family and you provide for your employees and their families. And so if you've got it set up that way, it doesn't feel good because it kind of feels like being in jail. So when we create leaders at every level, what we do is we actually instill a way of thinking in everybody
through education and through systemization of the business and training is this, and then reaffirming it over a long period of time to the point where everyone becomes a leader along. Now, this is not easy to wrap your head around. I'd be lying if I said this just came to me naturally. It doesn't come to anybody naturally.
We're all control freaks. You've heard me say this before. Ultimately, we all think that we know how to do everything and that other people don't, or that we can do it better, or that we have the common sense, or that we have more motivation. But the truth is we really don't. Ultimately, the person with the most control in the business is likely to be the leader. And when the leader of that business starts to relinquish all of that control by systemizing and training others and giving other people clear metrics, targets, and accountability, they give up that control and transfer that opportunity to other people. And then other people step into their leadership. And you don't have to look far to be convinced that everybody is a leader, because everybody gets out of bed each day and they decide to go to work to support themselves or support their families, to provide a better future for themselves. They make that decision every day. They just happen to choose a company and a leader to align with when they decide to get a job as opposed to starting their own business. That doesn't mean that they don't have an entrepreneurial spirit. It just simply means that given their experience, their financial situation, and maybe business know-how, they've decided to align with a leader who already runs a business. And so with all of that in mind, I think what we want to do is figure out a way to enable people to step into their leadership and step into that entrepreneurial spirit that naturally already sits within each person. And we know this to be true because everybody goes to work for themselves. Now, what does that look like? I think it's important before we hop into any lesson to think about why this is so important. Like, why bother with all of this? Business was just kind of humming along, doing its thing for the past 5 years. And although it was really frustrating, I didn't have to focus on all of this new information. I didn't have to focus on teaching other people all this stuff. Like, why should I bother doing this? Why is lean better? Ultimately, I think it's really important that you and everybody in your company really kind of comes to a realization of why lean thinking and continuous improvement is good for the business, the customers, but most importantly, the employees and the shareholders of the business. Because ultimately, the business exists to provide for you, your employees, and yes, the customers and the community. But ultimately, at the core, the business was started to provide for the owners, and then immediately when you started hiring, you started to provide for the employees and their families. We just happen to fuel that with customers and solving problems for customers. But ultimately, we know what our mission is. Now, I'm going to kind of talk about what happens without lean thinking. And I'm not going to beat the daylights out of this. We don't need to stand around and have negative conversations. But we do have to acknowledge the way it is. And if the way it is in your business is like there's a high level of chaos day to day, and chaos is just a lot of people asking a lot of questions that likely should have answers. That's an easy way to think of chaos in your business. Lots of waste. By now, most of you know and understand the 9 types of waste. If people are waiting for information and waiting for materials, and if they're overproducing or underproducing, if there's defective work, if there's all kinds of mistakes with material ordering and we order too much or not enough, there's just lots of little things happening that are adding up to be a lot of waste. Most businesses have at least 40% of their day completely unbilled. So we know that there's lots of waste. Then, missed details. We never get a job right the first time. We always have to go back. There's just always unfinished business. We can't get paid when the job ends. We can't get our milestone payments when we're expecting. We've got a lot of customer callbacks, lots of warranty work. There's a lot of missed details in the business. We've got an unbelievable amount of broken promises in the business. We break promises to our employees. We break promises to our suppliers. We break promises to customers. It's happening everywhere. And as a business scales, this happens more and more. I remember I'm getting to the point in my own business when it was scaling really quickly where I felt like I started to feel like I was a liar. And I woke up every day trying to be as honest as possible. But when there's so many stakeholders and so many things going wrong, you find yourself making excuses or even kind of putting together answers before you know if they're entirely true. You hope they're true, but the reality is there's no systems, no controls to rely on. And so you're actually just relying on a hope. I hope this is true, but I'm not sure it's true. And so every time you're saying things, you're actually saying things and questioning yourself as you go. And this is just not the way it should be in life or in business. And whether you own the business or whether you're a part of the company as an employee, that doesn't feel good. We want to get away from broken promises. We get out of bed each morning to be good people, Nobody wants to feel like they're saying things that aren't entirely true or that they're not even sure are true. But in business, we have to be able to make commitments to clients, make commitments to employees. And we have to know that we have a financial plan. We have to know that we have people. We have to know that we have systems to manage customer expectations, and obviously systems to go out and get the work done efficiently enough to make all of that happen in a way where it's profitable enough that we can keep investing in improvements. So long days, upset customers, the ultimate result, low wages and profits that just aren't there. Super frustrated employees, burned out owners and employees. Many employees get burned out as well. This is not an owner problem. Burnout is real at every level in the business, frontline all the way up to ownership. And, ultimately, I think it's this. Like, do you want a business that owns you, or do you want a business that you own and share in the outcome with everybody in it? And that's really the difference between continuous improvement and every average company. The average company looks like this, and if that's what you want, then keep doing what you have. But make sure that you actually think about whether or not it has to be that way. Now, as an organization, I think it's important just to say, hey, this is what it looks like without lean thinking. What is it going to look like with lean thinking? This is where you really get the buy-in, because if you want to create leaders at every level in your business, it's really important that you talk about the way it is today and the way it needs to be in the future. Now, I think that always starts with your mission and vision. Now, the mission and vision ultimately in the business dictates everything. And so what I want to do, I'm just going to use my son Jake just started a landscape business, so it's easy for me to reference his stuff. His mission and vision is pretty simple. Ultimately, we're building the best residential landscape brand in the world. Not the biggest, but the most respected. So that was his starting opening. As I talked to him and said, what do you want to build? That's what he described. Next up, we grow our company by growing people, hiring apprentices, developing professionals, and building a lean team of entrepreneurs to solve problems, protect profits, and deliver unmatched results. Through a world-class craftsmanship and lean thinking, we transform lives, our teams, and our clients, one project at a time. So very simple. This is what the business exists to do. This is why there's a business. Now, whatever yours looks like is completely fine. It's up to you, right? There's no right, there's no wrong. There's a clear niche market here. There's a plan that's very people-centric. There's people first. And there's an outcome that's really clear. By doing these projects, we're going to transform lives. And so very simple mission. Everybody here can create one. And ultimately what we want to do is now say to our teams, hey, let's go back to our mission and vision, and let's think about without lean thinking, can we really accomplish this? And that's why I think it's so important to actually go through a list like this and say, if we keep doing everything the way we've always done it, we're never going to be able to actually see that vision happen. And so with chaos and waste and missed details, broken promises, exceptionally long hours and work days, upset customers, frustrated employees, poor profits, low wages, we can't be the best in the world at anything. And so the reason why we have to think lean and the reason why we have to create this continuous improvement culture is so that we can become the best in the world and have the opposite of all of these things. And so the why is really important. And I'll always urge you, when you're trying to shift the culture in the business, start with the why and spend a lot of time on it, right? We just spent 12 minutes talking about why. Now it's time to learn. Now, I really want to point out how we teach these courses because I spent millions of dollars learning how to teach. I didn't just wake up one day and know how to teach. You're going to notice that Kristen is going to start putting out more teaching frameworks to help you understand exactly how to deploy things a little better. And the number one thing I want to make sure that everybody's clear is always paint the mission or the vision and then talk about the problems that exist, the pain points that you're dealing with, and then move on to the solution. That's how people learn. First, they want to know where they're going. They want to see what's in the way, and then they want to understand exactly what they need to do in order to go ahead and make that commitment to themselves to start changing. Now, in your company, you have to be the evangelist. You have to go out and do this every single day, which means you need a team of people at the leadership level who understand the company strategy and understand what lean thinking is, understand the mission most importantly and the vision, and they just talk about the mission and vision and the why before they start to tell people the what. And you have to learn to do that over and over and over again. And the more that you do that, the more the culture is going to shift. But it does start at the top. And I can't reiterate this enough. Those of you that are here today, you're the leaders in your company. This program is for the leadership team in your company. It's not for the owner, it's for the leadership team. Because I don't think an owner can do this on their own. The owner has to do this with a team of people that are leading the company. Because what we need is a whole group of evangelists in each company to lead this. It's not a one-person team. Otherwise, you've got the inch-by-inch kingdom. The lean leadership framework that I want to talk about, it basically starts here. We want to define the vision. It's what we talked about a few minutes ago. And by defining the vision with everybody in the company, I don't mean talking about it once a year. I mean actually starting every weekly meeting, every monthly meeting, every quarterly meeting with a quick recap of the mission and vision. It doesn't have to be reading it off the page. It has to be you reminding everybody in the company why the company exists, what impact you're going to have on them, on the customers, and as an entity. Now, when we think about empowering people to actually go and solve problems, we have to think about how we're going to do that. Leadership at every level, that's easy to say, but it's very hard to accomplish. That's why we're talking about this today. Continuous improvement mindset, again, pretty easy to say, but to get a whole company thinking that way, that's not an easy thing. And that's what LeanScaper is all about, is we're trying to create a mindset within the whole organization that everybody can align to so there is a common language. So we want to do this by building some SOPs. We want to have structured meetings. We want to use data. We want to incentivize lean thinking. We want to create leaders through IDPs. We're going to give you this framework today in the community just to circle back to. That's why I put it up here. But I want to kind of describe this in action for a minute. As I think about visualizing the workflow in the business, what I'm trying to do as I visualize the workflow is I'm trying to think about one specific thing that isn't going well in the business. And then we just keep doing this over and over and over again in every area of the business. This is, I think, where a lot of people wonder, like, how do I get there? Like, I get a lot of people saying, like, how do I get there? And I say, by doing it every single day. And what you're doing is you visualize the workflow that's right in front of you. It could be ordering material. It could be answering phones. It could be the whole sales process. It could be morning rollout. It could be building a deck. It could be planting a tree. There's many different workflows. But what we want to do is we want to visualize the whole workflow, which is why value stream mapping is so important. And hey, look, this is a value stream map right here at a high level, but we want to break down each workflow very, very detailed. Now, once we go through the effort of value engineering and thinking about where's all the value in that process, then what we should do is we should teach the frontline staff how to solve these problems for themselves. Now, if it's material ordering, if it's getting a flat tire, if it's booking a day off, if it's calling in sick, if it's requesting training, all of these things, we should make sure that our frontline staff are trained once on how to do them and then held accountable to following that standard. And the only way that we can do that is by creating standard operating procedures. So we don't just tell people what to do when we're teaching them, we show them what we want them to do. And the way that we show them, it's always going to be heavily based around using SOPs. So you should write the SOP that solves the problem. Then you should take the time to go out with the crew, the frontline people, teach them the SOP so that they can systematically eliminate that problem by following your standard operating procedure. And this is where lean thinking really hits the road. Like a lot of times people want to skip the SOP step. Well, you might as well skip the entire thing if you're not going to write SOPs. And if you're not going to use SOPs to come back to your staff and teach them the standard, then you're never going to have a standard. You will always have chaos in your business. And so what we want to do is we want to do these in the right order. So we want to think about what flow interruptions are holding us back the most, or where are we feeling the greatest pain right now? And then we'll write an SOP, we'll train the team to it, and that one's gone. And then we move on to the next one. And this is continuous improvement, right? It's nothing more than another wheel, right? We figure out, we have a goal, we figure out a strategy, we write an SOP, we measure what's happening, we look at a result, then we assess that result, we create an improvement, and we're back into the process. We're just constantly re-evaluating where we stand, what our pain points are, and we just keep setting some short-term goals to make things better, and we keep measuring to make sure it's working. And if the results aren't good, it's okay to go back and make a change to the SOP. There's nothing wrong with that. If the result that we're looking for isn't there, then let's go back and change the SOP 1 time, 2 times, 3 times maybe, until we get it right. And then, you know what? The company might grow and we're going to break that standard operating procedure because it's not scalable enough, and we'll fix it again and again and again. And the one thing I can't reiterate enough is that we're never going to have this finished. This is a living, breathing thing. Continuous improvement and lean thinking and building a lean company, it's just something that never ends. You're just going to work on it over and over and over. And so what we want to really focus on is the process. Once we've got these SOPs living, breathing, and every time we're finding a big problem, we're creating a priority matrix and we're just fixing the biggest problems, what happens is we get the chance to measure it. Now over here, as I said, I want to measure it, and I want to make data part of the daily language in the business. Now, the way that we do that is by creating awareness around what the data is. Now, the data, in our case, for frontline crews, which is where a lot of our day-to-day inefficiencies sort of turn up, but not where they start. They start with the owner and the managers. They just turn up with the crew. That's where we see it. And so naturally we blame them. But the truth is they're doing the best with what they've been given. And now those who didn't give them the tools, resources, and education are now pointing at them, blaming them for all of the problems. That might be the way it is in your company. That's a tip. It's a hard thing to live with, but it might be the way it is in your company. The problem starts at the top, they blame the bottom, and the bottom can't change it. There's only one group that can change it, and that's the leadership team. Now, when we think about making data part of the daily language, there's only one group of people that can do that, and that is the leadership team. You've either made it that way or you haven't. And in your business, if frontline staff don't know how many hours a job was estimated to take, and if they can't see exactly for themselves how many hours they've used to date and how many they have remaining, then you've made it in a way where they have zero control to actually impact profitability, because they don't have the basic information to know what winning looks like. And you made it that way, or you failed to make it the right way. So what we want to do is make sure that at the very minimum, this data becomes part of the data language. As soon as possible, you need estimated versus actual hours. You want your staff to know the job was bid to take 300 hours and they've used 100 and they've got 200 left. Then they can say, hey, wait a minute, we've used a third of the hours and I don't think we're a third done yet. So we've got to turn up the volume a little bit. We need to get things done quicker. We need to find a way to eliminate some of the flow interruptions and bring this thing on time. Now, we need to make it very clear to them. And so we need to use scorecards in order to make sure they understand what reality is. Because otherwise, what happens is people start to think that everything's going really incredible or that everything's going really bad, when in fact, maybe it's the total opposite. So we want people to know when they're winning, because oftentimes winners are winning and they're not being told. And when they're not being told, the intensity slowly backs off over time. And because they don't have a form of measure, they kind of get disoriented. It'd be like flying a helicopter into the clouds. Immediately, you lose any sense of whether it's good or bad, or where are you about to hit a mountain? Where's the ground? Where's the sky? You get completely disoriented. That's the way it is for most employees. They just don't know. And so when we give them the estimated versus actual hours, they've got this North Star metric. They've got this metric that they can just work on. And it brings this sort of awareness, but also this calming feeling into the equation where, hey, I know exactly what winning looks like. I know what I need to do. Now I just got to figure out where the flow interruptions are so that I can solve them for myself. Now, every crew leader wants this. There are not anybody that doesn't want this that's leading a crew shouldn't be leading a crew. But most landscape business owners just don't have the estimated hours available, and they don't have scorecards. That was really why I built LMN originally, was I just needed a way to make sure that everybody in the field understood these hours. Then, when I showed up to have daily meetings on the job sites, which I was a big fan of stopping in on every job, when I would get there, I could always have a meeting about reality, because I could point back to estimated versus actual hours, and we could talk about whether or not we needed to make changes to the team, to the equipment, to the materials, whether we had to talk to clients about any details or go to architects or engineers to value engineer something. But we could always come back to the hours, and that gave us a common reality. Are we winning or are we losing? This is the most important thing in continuous improvement, because you can't improve what you can't see. So we have to make data part of the daily language. And if there's one big takeaway from this week, I want it to be this. If your crews are outperforming the work and they don't know how long it should take, you have to change that. You have to make that a priority. Trust me, once the crews know exactly how long it should take, then they'll start to flag flow interruptions, and they'll start to tell you where all the problems are, because they need a reason for the jobs to be behind. And you want to know those reasons so that you can go and create SOPs that eliminate those reasons, over time. And then you've got a continuous improvement loop. See, the whole point of daily, weekly, and monthly meetings is to talk about what's broken so that we know what to fix. That's what the meetings are for. We're not there just to say, hey, this is all going perfect. We're there to figure out what isn't going great. So yeah, we have to start by talking about the wins. I say this all the time. Open up the meeting and talk about all the wins, but then quickly start to talk about the opportunities for improvement. These daily tactical meetings, we're talking about our immediate needs. Weekly, we're starting to talk more about like the project as a whole. Monthly, we're looking at how projects are going, but we're also talking more strategically in general, like, hey, what changes should we be making to our overarching strategy or the way we're doing things or who we're working for or what services we have. Quarterly meetings, we're going super in depth on strategy for the next 90 days. But all of these meetings are just designed to highlight where we need to actually drive improvement. So continuous improvement actually kind of really gets solidified with the meetings. Making data part of the daily language allows us to have better meetings. That's what we're trying to do. When we have better meetings, then those meetings turn into individual development plans, they turn into SOPs, they turn into training programs, they turn into changes. And that is where lean thinking becomes reality. What we're going to do when we have these daily, weekly, monthly meetings is we're going to say, okay, let's update the individual development plans for our staff to fill those voids. Because, you know, rather than teach people at the crew level, I can keep hiring middle managers like every other landscaping company and never make any money. Or I can just teach the people that actually do the work how to make decisions and eliminate problems. And I can create an entire company of leaders so that I don't have a lot of middle managers with all the broken telephone. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to keep updating individual development plans and creating a career pathway that allows people to keep replacing themselves over and over and over again. That level 5 leadership mindset, it's my job to create an opportunity for somebody else to step into my job so that I can take a step forward in my career. That is a central theme in the LeanScaper operating system. We have to be creating a void by moving to the next level and allowing somebody to step into our role. And the way that we do this is by creating standard operating procedures that enable other people to understand what we do so that they can learn the standard operating procedures, learn the supporting skills, understand the data, the metrics that we're going to use to monitor whether or not these things are happening, and then they've got the job. And so the individual development plans have to be heavily focused around training staff to the SOPs that they're going to need to utilize to do their jobs. And so over the next few months, what you're going to really start to see us releasing are these 100 SOPs that your company needs to deploy and manage to. In the strategic growth workshop that's coming up in Charlotte, we're going to set your strategy for the next 3 years. We're going to identify all of the SOPs that are needed. We're going to make sure that you've got a library to draw from, our library. And what we're going to do is make sure that you walk away with a strategy to develop individual development plans to fill all the positions in your company with people who not only understand the standard operating procedures, but people that understand how to identify when they're not working and flag those so that you can collaborate and keep improving those SOPs over time. And then what you have is a culture of leadership. And that's really what we are here to talk about today, is building this culture of leadership. Now, the way that it happens in your business, back over here to this framework, We define the vision. We're always going to focus on defining the vision. We want to make sure that we can empower people knowing what that vision looks like. And then we want to really make sure that we've got this daily data in place. Now, daily data is job costing and scorecards. We want to make sure that we've got a feedback loop, transparent information at every level of the business, which means you have to deploy the scorecards. If you're going to pretend that everything's okay and not share the information, everybody's going to pretend that everything's okay back. You have to have scorecards to really align on reality. So once we've got this vision built and we've got data that everybody understands, and again, at the front line for this year, getting started, estimated versus actual hours is a great place to start if you're not already doing that. Then we can talk revenue, then we can talk gross profit, but the number one metric, if you don't get to anything else, is just estimated versus actual hours so that people know when we're ahead or when we're not. If this is too much for you to deploy, estimated versus actual hours, then you've got a major problem in the business. If you can't find a way to distribute estimated versus actual hours, then you don't have an estimating system and you don't have a tracking system. Those two things have to be in place in order to have a continuous improvement business. So I'll say this, that is the place to start if they're not in place. You have to be able to share estimated versus actual hours, and you have to be able to do that in real time. We can't do that at the end of the month. Now, once we've got that data in place, what we want to do is we want to start to think about how we're going to talk about it. That is the LeanScaper operating system. We're trying to find a way to consistently talk about the results that we're seeing. Now, for crews, we want 5 little mini huddles a day on the job site. When we get there in the morning, after first break, after lunch, afternoon break, and end of day, we want to talk about hours. We want to talk about material needs, equipment needs, information needs. We want to just talk about this constantly. And what we're doing is we're creating a continuous improvement mindset. We're creating lean thinking at every level by forcing a system upon the entire company. And that is the limit of your force or your push or your control. It's just follow the system or leave. It's that simple. It's 5 meetings a day on our job sites if you're a crew foreman or a crew leader or a crew manager. And if you don't hold the meetings, then you get fired. It's black and white. And any other way in your business will lead to chaos, upset customers, upset employees, high turnover, low profits, and low wages. If you can't stop and talk about your people needs, your equipment needs, your material needs, your information needs 5 times a day on your job site with everybody on the job site, then you shouldn't be managing the crew. It's that simple. Every week we have to have a meeting with those team leaders and the operations leaders, and we have to kind of talk about the bigger problems that we're seeing on job sites, the big flow interruptions. We've got suppliers that aren't getting our deliveries here on time. We're short on equipment. I keep waiting for information from this architect, or I've got this homeowner that changes their mind every day on what we're doing. Like, we have to have a structure to have those conversations. And then each month, we want to then talk a little bit more. And this, again, this continuous improvement really starts to hit with the recurring meetings. And so if you don't have these in place yet, you're not going to end up with a culture of continuous improvement unless you have time to talk about continuous improvement. So these meetings are the key. What we talk about is the data that we've embedded in the daily business. Then, once we find problems and we have these meetings and get into talking strategy, whether we mainly talk strategy at monthly and quarterly, weekly meetings, daily meetings, they're very tactical. They're influencing our opinion of our strategy. And then what we do is when we kind of revisit our strategy, we figure out, hey, wait a minute, we've got some big gaps. Let's build some SOPs to fill those gaps. Let's train the team to them. Let's make sure they understand them. And then let's embed those SOPs and the related training into our individual development plans. This is why Greenius is such an important product, right? We want to be able to create our SOPs, embed them in Greenius, embed them in our career paths, and that way we know that anybody who's a first-year apprentice is getting all of the training on our SOPs that relate to their role. And so what we've done is we've created continuous improvement by slowly and surely making sure that the next step in the process is connected to the last step. It all wraps up with the Greenius training and the SOPs being embedded. So once you write your SOPs, you run them through an AI course generator, you embed that in Greenius, and you put it in the related career pathways. And now every time anybody gets hired in your company, they're doing all of the training so that they do have the common sense that we all think people should have. The reason they have it is because we made it that way. We can't expect people to have common sense about the way your business works because there isn't 80 million of your businesses that look, act, and function the same way. There's no way that that's common. So you have to make the common sense by embedding the right type of training in the IDPs, which are individual development plans or career plans in your business. And you can deliver those in two main ways, in my opinion. One, on-the-job training, and two, online training. Now, on-the-job training, where does that happen? 5 meetings a day. That's where. We have 5 meetings a day, and we make everybody aware of what good looks like, what our goals are, what the flow interruptions are, and we're just constantly talking continuous improvement. While we're doing the work in between those 5 meetings, we're optimizing the way we do things tactically. And then what we're doing is we're bringing the bigger problems back in our weekly and monthly meetings, creating SOPs, embedding those in training, and systematically improving and changing the mindset in the company. That's your job as a leader. That is the leadership team's job in your company. It's not an easy job. Being a leader is not an easy job. It's not for everybody. If you don't want to create this, then you probably should go and get a job doing something else. But in the landscaping business, if you want to win and you want to actually operate lean, you want high wages, high profits, happy customers, and a business that you own instead of a business that owns you, this is what it takes. I'll take some questions now, and we'll just kind of have an open dialogue.
Thanks, Mark. We do have a question here, and it's one that we tend to get quite frequently. Mark, you've mentioned crew teams quite a bit, but I'm curious, how do you handle meetings with your admin or office staff? What's your approach to keeping those efficient and productive?
Same way. So I'm going to say I do talk about the field a lot. You are spot on. But we want daily huddles. Regardless, I'm just going to say team level here. So whatever team you're on, whether it's a crew, the admin team, the sales team, the operations management team, the project management team, the fleet management team, regardless of the scale of the business, whether you're owner-operator with 3 people or you've got 400 people, you've got teams. And that's why it's so important just to look at it that way. We've always got the daily huddle. We've always got a weekly. We've always got a monthly, which actually turns into one of those, turns into a quarterly. And the difference here is we just make them a little bit longer. And what we're doing here is we're talking super tactical. And then here we're still talking tactical, but we're also reviewing our gaps in strategy. And then monthly, we're looking at like the metrics in much greater detail. So we're going to do a scoreboard review, and we're going to really talk about strategies here. And then quarterly, again, what we're going to do is we're going to reset targets and really update some strategies. So what at every level, whether it's office or any other team, let's just always think of this as being the core four. When you hear me talk about core four all the time, this is relentlessly having meetings that allow teams, whether it's leadership team, crews, admin team, sales, all those that I mentioned, to have daily, weekly, and monthly and quarterly meetings where we make data part of the daily conversation. We start every meeting by talking about a few wins. Then we quickly talk about the key data points that relate, whether it's daily, weekly, monthly, or quarterly. They expand the amount of data or metrics that we talk about. But what we want to make sure is that everybody knows exactly what good looks like, what the targets are, how we're doing, what the flow interruptions are, and what we're going to do about it to get better. And when we do this over and over and over again, continuous improvement becomes the culture. Lean thinking is just the way it is, but we have to have data, we have to have metrics, we have to have meetings, and then we have to change something by creating SOPs and using individual career plans to then make sure that these get embedded into the career plan long term. This is, in my opinion, how it all comes together. But great question. I love that you really shared my gap. I love that because I do talk a lot about crews. I think we hyper focus on crews when in fact there's so many other teams within a business. So thanks for that.
So Sam says, it feels like a lot of meetings include the leadership team. When do you bring the entire company in to be a part of the meetings? Or do you have the leaders disperse the information? You want to talk through that, Mark?
So I don't think there's a right or a wrong in terms of the company-wide meetings. My personal feeling is company-wide, ideally, in a perfect world, we do a monthly all hands meeting. That is different than these team level meetings. An all hands meeting is not to replace a team level monthly meeting. I think an all hands meeting is fantastic so that we can share big changes to strategy, high level company metrics, exciting updates, information. This could very easily be accomplished once a month on a Monday morning for 1 hour by bringing everybody in an hour early so that you're not delaying your work that day. I think that's a great way to do things, just once a month, all hands, and then make one of those a little bit more strategic in nature each year if you like, and extend it by a couple of hours and make it a 2-hour meeting, or in some cases 3 or 4 hours, maybe your big spring kickoff. But I would strongly recommend an all hands monthly meeting as being that company level. But again, that doesn't replace these at the team level.
Would you mind just giving a little bit more of a high level on what our Accelerator members can expect to see when they join us in Charlotte in July?
Yeah, for sure. This one's really, really important, I think, because people do need to start making travel plans. We have an incredible venue lined up. It's going to be a fantastic place to spend a few days. As always, we always really encourage that you do bring, family along. There's lots to do at the places we stay, and generally speaking, they're always welcome at our evening events and whatnot. What I'd like to say though is this strategic blueprint event is really where you fully deploy the LeanScaper operating system. Now, over the course of the first 3 intensives, we talked a lot about people, obviously, a lot about revenue growth, a lot about lean systems and efficiency. But this strategic blueprint is you creating a 3-year plan for the business with a 5-year vision, but the 3-year plan will be very specific, with an org chart that will evolve over the next 3 years to enable that growth, with strategies, with detailed list of standard operating procedures that are going to support it, with metrics, and with the basis for a financial strategy that's going to make sure that you can do this financially and grow the business without hitting any major roadblocks or setbacks due to a lack of funding. And so we're going to go through this strategic blueprint in a way where you really have a lot of confidence in your mission and vision, so that others around you, and ideally you bring your leaders with you, really understand where you're going and why, and what that opportunity looks like for them and everybody else that comes into the business. So that confidently you know exactly what you're going to do every quarter for the next 12 quarters. Imagine what that would feel like, knowing exactly what you're going to do for the next 12 quarters. Now, every 4 quarters each year, you're going to revisit that plan. You're going to come back and spend another 2 days with us, and we're going to update that plan. We don't ever let that plan run out entirely for 3 years, but we do create a 3-year strategy, and every quarter we slightly pivot, and you just keep pivoting each quarter. And trust me, 3 years from now, the business won't look like it did on paper in our first 3-year strategy session. It'll be way bigger and way better than that, way better. Because right now, your limiting beliefs are holding you back from seeing what you could actually create if you just keep doing this. But that said, we're going to build a 3-year strategy that's going to set you up for very strategic pivots every 3 months. And you'll pivot every 3 months in that quarterly strategic meeting. You're going to say, you know what, we said we were going to do this, but now that we're here, we're going to change that. We're going to go a 3 degrees different. And that's going to change the trajectory. And so what we're doing is we're teaching you how to operate a strategic company, a company that everybody understands, everybody aligns to, everybody can measure, and everybody can improve in a collaborative way. Now, this is a process that took me 30 years to learn. And I spent millions and millions of dollars learning, and I don't know, tens of millions in mistakes not getting it right. And I want you to understand exactly how to do this and truly change not only your future, but the future of everybody in your company and the future of this industry. And that means really being able to understand how to financially plan for it, how to invest and build people, and how to use lean thinking to do that, how to consistently grow revenue and then maintain that revenue, and ultimately how to get all of that work done in a way that is so efficient that you can afford to pay your staff more money and continue to build better and better profits so that you can keep investing in the business. So this method of strategic planning that we're going to go through over 2 days is the LeanScaper operating system. I know you've been in the program for a while and we're just getting to it, but trust me, this July is the time to reset your strategy, because in the fall, we're going to build a very detailed financial plan and a budget that supports it. And then you're going to invest heavily into the business throughout December through April. And next year, your business is going to look entirely different than it does today. And the reason that we know that you have to do this in July is because I learned it the hard way. You can't start in January every year. That doesn't work. You have to start in July. When July actually hits and you step out of the business, all the problems are fresh. We create a strategy. We start to drive major improvements immediately coming out of that strategic planning workshop, and continuous improvement becomes a 365-day endeavor. It's not January and February when you've got nothing else to do. You're going to change everything in July.
There it is. Ladies and gentlemen, we are already sitting at 79 registrants for the Charlotte event. So please get your teams registered. If you intend to join us in person, let's make sure that you reach out to your guide, that you get your tickets sorted. We have expanded our room size from Nashville and from Miami, but of course, space is still limited and we are anticipating that we will sell out. So please join us. We look forward to seeing you. We've got 1 minute left, and I will just say I know we've alluded to some changes to our accelerator program. We are really focused on the LeanScaper operating system and ensuring that we're providing you with actionable deliverables from these weekly sprints and from your monthlies. So what we're going to do is we're going to post in the accelerator group a little later today with not only the agenda for May, but also an explainer on what you can expect from us as we move forward in this program. Mark's mentioned, the LeanScaper operating system. We're ready to launch. We've got a lot of resources backing it up now. We've been working really hard behind the scenes in order to make sure that we get this right. And we are excited to start launching some changes to our program here for May. So more to come. You can expect a post from us today on that. And we're just really excited to have you all on this journey with us. And we're really grateful for all of the feedback so far. So with that, go
Kristen,
ahead,
maybe,
Mark.
I mean, it's probably worth sharing one, at least just conversationally, one major change that's coming is the groups that are changing within the
Yeah.
community. Maybe just describe why the timing, why now we're
Yeah.
able to do this, and why we didn't do it originally, and what they should expect to start seeing in the community platform as it relates to their group sizes.
I think that's a really great point, Mark. So we have one accelerator group in the community right now where everybody is together. And for a long time, that served the purpose of connecting you all, getting you all talking, used to seeing each other's faces. But as we move forward with our new webinar structure, where we are really focused on deliverables and deploying a piece of the operating system every single week, we really want to lean hard into the peer support of working alongside companies that are the same size as you. So we are going to be splitting our accelerator group as of Monday into 3. So we'll have starters in a group by themselves because we have a really large group of starters. We're going to have grow and scaling together in one group, and then we'll have enterprise and legacy in a group together as well. And the thought process here is we want you to feel really comfortable working alongside these companies that are the same size and going through the same pain points as you, having the same growth opportunities. But we also want you to start sharing. So after each one of our weekly sprints, our hope is that you're taking the deliverable, you're taking the action items, the steps that we're giving you on that weekly sprint. You're completing the work that you need to do within your business, and then you're going to your accelerator community group and you're sharing your wins, you're sharing maybe some roadblocks that you have, and people are supporting each other. We think there's such a strong influence in this industry amongst peers, and we think that together we're all going to be able to grow and expand our businesses by working together in these groups.
Yeah, definitely, just to layer onto that, when you've got your whole leadership team here working on these things together, if they have a group of similar size companies focused on similar problems and everybody's in that group sharing and contributing, you can ask questions, get resources, tools, tips, tricks, ideas, what we did, what worked, what didn't. And I think that's really important for all of the roles within your business. So super important that you get your entire leadership team into these more specific groups that we're launching next week so that they've got a little bit more support than just maybe the leader of the company. We think this is going to take a lot of load off of the leaders who are generally already very overwhelmed, and really spread that load out and give everybody here a much bigger network of people just to draw from, ask questions, get ideas, and hopefully even, a little motivation on a bad day. Because let's face it, there's plenty of those when going through this much change. So hope that lands well for everybody when it hits next week. As always, we're open to feedback, but we really think this is going to help you put some of these ideas into action a little bit faster. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week.